What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new, hi, I'm Sydney. Every single Thursday I sit down and I talk about the craziest true crime in every single state, the one that stuck out to me the most. So if you like true crime, you should subscribe. Happy New Year's Eve, hence the fireworks going on in the background. I am super stoked. Hopefully 2021 is a lot better than obviously this year that we've had in 2020. I tried doing my makeup today and I was so excited to do my makeup for New Year's because I was gonna do like a glitter look with some like purple and pink color. I was so excited. I went to go get the Juvia's Place super full coverage foundation that everybody has, and it did not like my skin at all. It was very patchy, and so I'm going to be returning that. That kind of just, if your foundation starts off really bad, that kind of just sets the mood as how your makeup's gonna go. So we're just gonna stick to no makeup today. So today's video is probably going to be the worst video that I have made because there is a lot of graphic details in this case. I don't know if it's going to be easy for some of you to watch it. I will say that the article that I read, it kind of tied in with SARIANS video. So if it sounds like I'm copying her, I swear I'm going to link down the article because everything she said in her video pretty much sums up this article, and I don't want y'all to think that I'm just literally sitting here copying what she's doing. She's an amazing true crime YouTuber, so obviously I'm going to link her channel down below. I actually didn't watch her video until when I was looking up this case because I got recommended it a few times. I typed in this lady's name and one of SARIANS' video popped up and I watched it and I was like, that literally sounds like the exact article that I just read. So I will link the article down below. There is a few things that are different that I have tied in from different articles and more information. This lady is probably the most sick lady that I have ever heard of in my entire life. Her name is Gertrude Baniszewski. I'm going to give a personal warning, to a trigger warning to everybody. This is torturous to children. There is child abuse and then obviously a child's death in this case. If that is something that y'all do not like to hear, then click off this video. It is not going to hurt my feelings. This lady is the worst. She's so sick. I just felt like I needed to say that myself before adding in my typed up warning. So yeah, we will just get into it. This story takes place in Indianapolis, Indiana, and this is the death of Sylvia Likens. September 19th, 1928 is when Gertrude von Fossen was born. She was born in Indianapolis, and not really much is said about her childhood, but at 11 years old she did witness her father die, so that's pretty sad because that happened at such a young age. She didn't grow up with her father. She did marry very young. She was around 16 years old whenever she married John Baniszewski. The two had 4 children together in the 10-year span that they were married. They had Paula, Stephanie, John, and Marie. Their marriage was not the best. John was physically abusive to Gertrude, and even though they were married for 10 years, around that 10-year mark, she decided enough is enough and she divorced him. And she wasted no time at all because a few weeks later she married a man named Edward, but that marriage only lasted 3 months. She just was hopping around. It's said that Edward was physically abusive to her as well, but that is possibly something that she just made up. But she did divorce him, and then she remarried her first husband, John. They were only married for a little bit, but in the time that they remarried and then re-divorced, they did have 2 kids together, and those names were Shirley and James. So Gertrude was in her late 20s, almost 30 at this point, and she started dating a younger man named Dennis, and he was 22 years old. In 1965, she fell pregnant again with Dennis's child, and she named this boy Dennis Jr. Well, of course, Dennis, the boyfriend, did not want to handle a child, and so he abandoned them and just stopped talking to them completely. She filed a paternity suit against him, and she actually won, but she never saw a dime from him, so she was starting to raise 7 kids on her own as a single mom, living in Indianapolis, Indiana, and she's not getting any help from anybody. Gertrude's home, however, was a hot spot for any kid to come over and do whatever they wanted. They could smoke, they could drink, they could talk dirty to each other, or even do dirty things. This is where there's going to be a shift change on someone else's life. This is about Sylvia Likens. Sylvia Likens was born January 3rd, 1949 to Lester and Elizabeth Likens. She had an older set of twin siblings, Diana and Daniel. She was the middle child, and then she had a younger set of siblings that were twins, Jenny and Benny. Sylvia was overprotective of her sister and probably the most close out of all the siblings with Jenny, because Jenny was diagnosed with polio, and because of this she had a limp leg, so she was not really strong with that leg. So in the summer of 1965 is when Sylvia's mom actually got arrested for shoplifting. So in the summer of 1965, Sylvia's mother was arrested for shoplifting, and Lester kind of come to the realization that he could not take care of the kids all by himself. So he was trying to figure out a way to possibly rehome, but still be a part of their lives, obviously, but rehome two of the youngest girls that couldn't really travel with him with this carnival that he was working for. And Sylvia was really good friends with Gertrude's daughter Stephanie at school. So Stephanie and Gertrude kind of decided, hey, if you and Jenny want to come live with us, you're more than welcome to. And so Lester and Gertrude talked about it, and they agreed to $20 a week to, like, for Lester to give to Gertrude to help out with Jenny and Sylvia living with her. Gertrude obviously accepted. She said, I'm going to take care of them like they were my own children, and that was a fat lie. The first week of living together went really well. They were getting, like, all the kids were getting along. They were doing their chores. They thought this could possibly work out. This is going to be fine. But Lester did not send the second $20 payment, which pissed off Gertrude completely. Side note, it's literally just $20. Like, and I understand this is a totally different time period, so that probably was a lot. Don't really know, but I don't think that $20 a week should have caused what is about to happen. I think that's stupid. $20, can you calm down for a second? So Sylvia and Jenny were just starting to feel Gertrude's physical wrath. Gertrude was getting pissed that that $20 wasn't showing up. She had rent to pay, she had mouths to feed, and then that $20 just wasn't showing up, and she was getting really pissed off. She first drug Jenny up the stairs and beat her with a leather belt. As she was doing this, she exclaimed, well, I guess I took care of you little bitches for a week for nothing. And literally, the day after this, the money showed up in the mail. That $20 that she was so upset about. Sylvia and Jenny's dad came a few days later to give another advanced payment of $20 for the week, and the two did not say anything about what had happened to their father. So Gertrude kind of refused Sylvia to babysit, so Sylvia wanted some extra cash herself, because she seemed like a hardworking girl. She seemed like she really enjoyed going and having a job at this age. So she started taking like soda bottles and stuff to recycle for cash. And when Gertrude found out about this, she beat her with a 1/4-inch wooden paddle. She struck her repeatedly across her back and in the back of the head. Also, Gertrude was so pissed off one time that she said that they ate too much whenever they went to church and they had this big church dinner. She literally started hitting them and beating them just for eating too much. But at this time, she had like chronic bronchitis, so she was kind of weak and couldn't do it herself. But she handed her wooden paddle off to Paula, who is her oldest daughter, and told her to take care of it. Something happened where something switched in Gertrude's mind where she wasn't going to continue abusing Jenny. She was just going to solely focus on abusing Sylvia. So Sylvia came home one day and had told her younger sister Jenny that she had gotten a boyfriend at school. Well, Paula was very jealous of Sylvia. She thought she was a lot prettier than she was. So Paula decided to go and tattletale to Gertrude for some reason. Gertrude was like, Paula, I get it. You can do whatever you want to her. I don't care. So Paula took this to heart and went over to Sylvia and kicked her repeatedly in her lower region and yelled at her, accusing her of being pregnant. Just awful things. Instead of continuously physically abusing Sylvia, Gertrude would start to lean more to abusing her by not giving her food. She refused for Sylvia to eat with them. So when Sylvia needed to eat, she had to go find dumpsters and trash cans and possibly find some food there. She wasn't allowed to work to make her own money to go buy food for herself. She wasn't allowed to eat the food that Gertrude bought. She was just abusing this poor girl. So Gertrude found out that Sylvia was eating out of dumpsters and trash cans, and most mothers, I'm not a mother, but correct me if I'm wrong, most mothers who hear about kids going and having to eat out of a trash can and stuff would be heartbroken. Nope. Not Gertrude, not her family. She found out and caught her doing this at one point. Paula, Gertrude, and another kid that was a neighbor named Randy, they force-fed her a hot dog full of so much spices and condiments, and it made her so sick that she threw up. And after she threw it up, they made her eat her throw up. They forced her to do so many terrible things. Gertrude started to accuse Sylvia of spreading rumors about Paula and Stephanie, saying that they were prostitutes, and she was spreading it around school. So because of this accusation, she made Sylvia stand, and she would taunt her and have all the neighborhood kids and Stephanie and Paula's friends come around and just verbally abuse Sylvia, just make her stand there and take it. Gertrude also said, hey, like, y'all are more than welcome to say or do whatever you want to Sylvia. Paula and Stephanie were trying to hurt Sylvia in as many ways as they can. One time, Paula just decided to punch her in the jaw, and she broke her wrist. So after she did that, she went and got her cast, the ones that like are really hard. Went home after having this cast and beat her up with the cast on. Of course, like I said earlier, classmates and neighbors would come over. Well, Paula and Stephanie were just trying to find just random friends of theirs at school to come over and physically, verbally, and sexually abuse Sylvia almost every day after school. I don't know why they would get other people involved, but they were just torturing and abusing this poor girl. They even got one of Sylvia's friends to turn against her, and Sylvia just stopped having friends because they were just turning everybody against Sylvia. They got all of her friends to come over and beat her up and abuse her as well. It was just like, what did she even do? Like, that's my thing. What on earth did Sylvia even do? Nothing. One time, Gertrude had accused Sylvia of stealing gym clothes that she actually needed to purchase for gym class. As punishment for this, she got a lit match and started to hold it up against Sylvia's fingertips while screaming at her how she's just making her life miserable and she hated her so much. So the family believed that Sylvia was kind of promiscuous in a way, and literally Sylvia was not doing anything. Gertrude was getting pissed off, and so she would get her kids, and then Gertrude also would kick her in her lower region, and then also they would make her strip down naked and insert just objects down into her lower region. One time they inserted a glass Coke bottle into her while they made her friends and her fellow classmates watch. I'm sorry. That was the part that I just literally couldn't get over when I was doing this. So, of course, Jenny and Sylvia were terrified of Gertrude and terrified that if they said anything to anybody that she would kill them, because Gertrude had said, if you tell anybody what I'm doing, I will kill you. So, of course, they believed it. There was one time that they had seen their older sister Diana at a park. Well, Sylvia went up and explained to her how hungry she was. Diana was like, hey, I have the rest of the sandwich, you can eat it. One of Gertrude's kids had seen and went back and told Gertrude. Gertrude, whenever she found out, was infuriated. Whenever Sylvia got home, Gertrude threw her into a bath of boiling hot water, and the pain was so intense that she passed out from this. Well, of course, when she passed out, this pissed off Gertrude even more, and she would bang on her head like against the walls to wake her up. So a local father, I guess from a student that Sylvia had went to school with, called the school and was saying, hey, there is a girl that is coming from Gertrude's house that has constant bruises on her. We think she's being abused. So one of the nurses had made a pit stop over at the house just to see what was going on. and Gertrude somehow manipulated her way out of it. Gertrude told the nurse that Sylvia had ran away with some boys and she just had really bad personal hygiene, and that's why there are just constant sores all over her body. The nurse and then the school didn't really seem to need to investigate any further. And that's BS to me, because if I'm at school and I'm constantly seeing this girl come in, she's probably underweight because she's not eating. She has bruises all over her body. I don't want to say this because I don't know, but she just kind of looks a mess. I would say something, and I don't know why people didn't really further investigate it. But basically, she had it covered, it was under control, and that's why nobody further investigated. Gertrude one day called the school one day in October, basically said that Sylvia was no longer going to go to school. She didn't have interest in going to school anymore. And this is whenever she decided to throw and lock Sylvia in the basement. This is my opinion, I don't know if this is true. I believe it was because of the phone call that she was like, oh crap, people are starting to notice, so she's just not going to go to school anymore. I think that is the reason as to why she stopped letting her go to school and threw her in the basement. The thing is, the parents, it said parents in the article, so I'm assuming that Elizabeth had gotten out of jail at this point, but it said the parents constantly came and visited Jenny and Sylvia at Gertrude's house. So how did they not notice? Like, how did no one know that this was going on? Why didn't they say, like, hey, like, you're losing weight, what's that bruise on you, like, why? So after she was taken from school is whenever the abuse got progressively worse, because she wasn't allowed to leave the house, so nobody could see her. And this is when the kids of the school were getting more involved. Gertrude would charge the kids 5 cents, and she said there are absolutely no limits. You are more than welcome to do whatever you want to Sylvia. She often would coach these kids. Keep in mind, these kids are like between 14 to 16 years old. Old enough to know better, but also still very young. She would coach them on different ways to abuse and torture Sylvia. Sylvia was covered in blisters and bruises and like cigarette burns, and Gertrude even tried carving "I am a prostitute and proud of it" on her abdomen, like on her belly, and she only could finish the I. I don't know why. There was a kid named Richard who came over all the time to abuse Sylvia, so she got him to finish the job by putting "I am a prostitute and proud of it" against her belly. Gertrude also talked the kids into branding Sylvia across her chest. She told the kids she wanted a letter S, but somehow it managed to become the number 3. While she was doing this, Gertrude was telling Sylvia that no man was ever going to love her because her body is just awful at this point. No one's gonna want to see her with the brand, and no one's gonna see her with the phrase. So this is a side note. I don't understand why Gertrude was so pressed about Sylvia being a slut. She also always called her a slut. Worried about Sylvia being promiscuous whenever Paula was literally pregnant at this time. Paula was pregnant. Paula was not married. Okay, she was unwed. She gave birth to a kid named Denny, and Gertrude hated that about Sylvia. She hated that she was a slut and promiscuous, even though Sylvia literally did nothing wrong. And it's like, your daughter. How about you really focus on what your daughter's doing, okay? Not saying, hold on, I'm gonna backtrack a second. I'm not saying anybody who gets pregnant while not being married is a slut. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Sylvia was literally doing nothing wrong, but she should have been more focused on what Paula was doing. That is all I'm saying. So one of the boys that would come over all the time was Stephanie's boyfriend. His name was Coy. His favorite thing to do to Sylvia was to go down to the basement that had concrete walls and floors and just body slam her into the walls and into the floors. At this point, Sylvia had started to lose control of her limbs. She was unbelievably weak. She told Jenny, she was like, hey, I know that I'm gonna die soon. I can just feel it. She said that she was just really weak and fragile and she didn't have much time, and she started to accept death. She was just getting tired of all of this and she really just wanted to leave. So Gertrude did not give Sylvia a bed or clothes or anything. She was constantly tied up in the basement naked. She wasn't able to go to the bathroom, so she would constantly wet herself or be sitting in her own feces because she couldn't move. This pissed off Gertrude even more because she had to clean her up and clean up, you know, the mess around her. Anything Sylvia did, Gertrude was pissed about. Gertrude had made Sylvia write a letter to her family basically explaining that she was going to run off with some boys and these boys raped and mutilated her and that is why her body looks the way that it is. Gertrude was going to give this letter to Sylvia's parents whenever they were coming to visit, but the plan was, because the letter said that she had ran off, what Gertrude was really going to do is bring Sylvia way out into the woods where she couldn't find her way back, and she knew she was weak and she couldn't go anywhere. She just couldn't really go anywhere, so she was just gonna leave her out in the woods to fend for herself and starve to death. Sylvia, however, was listening to Gertrude's plan with her family and she tried to escape. Obviously, she was not successful because Gertrude grabbed a curtain rod and beat her in the face with it. Gertrude made the kids grab Sylvia and tie her wrist up on the basement railing where she was hanging by her wrist. Her toes were barely touching the ground. Gertrude, while she was hanging, started shoving crackers in this poor girl's mouth. She hadn't had any water, so her mouth was so dry, and she started to choke on these crackers because she couldn't swallow them. She was just so dehydrated and malnourished that she just physically couldn't swallow them. Gertrude, while Sylvia was hanging, started to punch her in the stomach, and Gertrude's son John was taking the feces out of baby Denny's diaper and putting it in Sylvia's mouth, along with her own feces that was on the ground. After they took her down from the basement railing, they beat her and stomped on her head to the point that she was unconscious, and then they went back upstairs. When Sylvia had somehow, like in a miracle, woken up, she wanted to call out. She started banging on the walls of the basement, on the ceiling, and just screaming. Every single bit of energy that she had, she was putting into possibly being rescued or for someone to hear her. But obviously and sadly, no one came. October 26, 1965, the family had went downstairs to get Sylvia. They realized that she was cold, but they thought she was asleep. They went upstairs to give her a warm bath, but she wasn't breathing. The family started to freak out, not because they cared, but because they just didn't want to be caught. They had killed her. Stephanie tried giving CPR while Gertrude yelled at Richard to call the police to come, and you know, she had been dead. There was no way that she was going to be able to be revived. When the police finally came, they explained that she had probably been dead between 8 to 12 hours, so she had passed away in the middle of the night. This is going to piss off a lot of people. It pissed me off really bad. Gertrude showed police the letter that she was going to show her parents, and she explained that this was the condition of her body whenever she came back. She had already ran off with the boys. She came back and she was nurturing her and cleaning her up all day, and this is just probably the result of what these boys did to her. It's like, no, bitch, she didn't. Thankfully, the police were not buying her story at all. The coroner explained that Sylvia's lips were practically chewed through. All 10 of her fingernails were bent completely backwards and all 10 of her fingers were broken. There was over 150 wounds from previous trauma or just recent trauma. She had severe muscle damage and she was missing the top layer of skin on her face, her chest, her neck, and her knee. The official cause of death was torture. I also read blunt force trauma, but it said altogether torture. So Jenny had went over to police and basically kind of backed up Gertrude's story. Whenever Gertrude wasn't paying attention, she told them, hey, if you get me out of here, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know. And so police got her out of there, took her to the police station. Jenny's testimony caused Gertrude, 3 of her kids and their 2 boyfriends, and then 5 of the neighborhood kids to be arrested. Gertrude obviously was like, I didn't do this, I have no involvement, these were all the girls and the boys that bullied her in school, I already told you, I have nothing to do with this. She even told police that she had called the police multiple times to see what they would do, and they didn't do anything. This was obviously not true because they went back and looked to see if she had ever called due to like phone records or something, and yeah, she had never called before in her life. Gertrude was convicted of first-degree murder, and Paula, her oldest daughter, was convicted of second-degree murder. They both received a life sentence, but Paula had a second trial, and she somehow got her plea down to manslaughter, and she was released in 2 years. She went from having a life sentence to 2 years in prison for killing someone. Stephanie had her charges dropped because she told them, I will testify against my family. There wasn't a lot of evidence that kind of tied Stephanie into anything, so she was let off the hook. Richard and Coy were charged with premeditated malice, but those 2 boys, along with Richard, were convicted of manslaughter during their trials. Coy and John served 18 months in a juvenile detention center, and Richard died a few years later at the age of 21 to lung cancer. So Gertrude happened to have a retrial. Get ready for this one. Her sentence was changed to 18 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole, in which she was granted parole in 1985. This lady tortured and abused, physically and sexually abused a kid for months, to the point of killing her, and she gets parole. I don't even think she served 30 years in prison. She changed her name to Nadine, and then her maiden name Von Fossen, and then moved to Iowa. Paula also, whenever she was released, moved to Iowa, changed her name as well, and became a school teacher, an elementary school teacher. Gertrude did not live only a few years after she was released from prison, because in 1990, only 5 years after being released from prison, she died of lung cancer. Since Paula had changed her identity, became a school teacher, school somehow found out about what had happened and her, time in prison, so they did fire her. She shouldn't have been able to be a school teacher in the first place. No, not even gonna justify it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, maybe if she had drugs or something, but no. If you have a criminal record, you shouldn't work with children, okay? Especially her charges, for the love of God. So John changed his name. John is one of Gertrude's kids. He changed his name, and get this, became a minister, okay? Out of all things, John became a minister. John played a role. All of the kids. In 2001, there was a memorial that was brought up in Indianapolis that was dedicated to Sylvia, and it was placed in the park that she constantly played at when she was a kid. And the movie American Crime was based off of this story as well. The house remained empty for a few decades, and then finally they decided to tear it down because it wasn't being sold to anybody. Nobody wanted to live in this house, and now it sits a church parking lot. It is now a parking lot for a church. And that last bit, I was not trying to be silly by any means. I am saying it because I am just in absolute shock, because in elementary school, either that or middle school, around that time, I heard of this story and it was being talked about a lot, and I thought that it was a book, like a fictional book, because of how unreal this story is. I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way that this happened. There's no way. This story is 100% real. This really happened. How can somebody do something like that? I wish it would have gave more background on Gertrude, you know what I mean? How does someone's brain just develop that way? This kid wasn't even hers. And Sylvia didn't even do anything. She was just impatient about $20. I'm sorry that this video was sick and twisted and vile and inhumane. I'm sorry. Thanks for watching today, everybody. Alright, y'all, I hope that this video didn't get you too down. Make sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends. And I will be seeing y'all next Thursday. And yeah, I love and appreciate y'all so much. Bye.